Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY sailboat refit video here aboard good old Athena. In last week's video I installed mahogany slats here in the forward cabin right below me. It was a somewhat time-consuming task, but the end result was super spiffy. I started out this week by bringing all of those wooden slats up to the workshop to varnish them. I'm about halfway done with that, and my goal for this week is to finish all of the varnishing, all of the painting, install all of the lights and all of the insulation in the forward cabin. That means hopefully after this week it's 99% ready for me to move in there. I've got a lot on my to-do list for this week, but I hope I'll also have time to install this exciting looking Garmin product. This is the Ondeck Hub. The Ondeck Hub will allow me to monitor Athena when I'm not here. So for instance, it can alert me if there is unauthorized access to the boat, if the shore power gets disconnected, if the boat drags while at anchor, or if the bilge pump runs more often than I expect it to. And it'll also give me 5 relays I can control from one of the chart plotters or from my phone. And what's really cool is that this little box will let me do that basically anywhere in the world as long as there is 3 or 4G coverage. Hopefully we'll have time to get back to the Ondeck Hub a little bit later in the video, but there is also a lot of other stuff I need to do. So let's not dilly-dally, let's head up to the workshop and get on with it. This is Athena. I purchased her 4 years ago in Scotland, and since then I've been busy undertaking a somewhat extensive refit, complete with rebuilding the entire deck, building a new rudder, a very extensive osmosis treatment, rebuilding most of the interior of the boat, and a ton of other fun stuff. In roughly 158 days, my fiancée Ava and I will start our journey to bring Athena from Europe to the US. Here are those beautiful mahogany slats from last week's video. I've already sealed the back of them, so now there's just the front left. I'm using fast, dry, clear wood sealer. This stuff is my new favorite thing. As per the TDS, the technical data sheet, I'm going to be thinning the first coat with 25% of thinner number 9. The reason for adding 25% thinner, which is quite a lot, is apparently to achieve better penetration. But if you read the TDS, it has a weird little detail in there where it specifies to use a brush for the first coat. The exact phrasing is down here, and it seems odd to me that a brush should help achieve better penetration than, for instance, a roller, especially when the stuff is thinned that heavily. But somebody went through the trouble of putting it in the TDS, so I'm gonna use a brush. The mix ratio is delightfully simple at 1:1. Let's get this thoroughly mixed and add 25% thinner. So far, so good. The first coat always looks a little but at least it's on there. I still need to apply another 3 coats of wood sealer on the slats. I'm gonna swing by every morning before heading to my day job and every afternoon when I get off of my day job, so they should be done in 2 days. Here aboard Athena, I'm in the middle of varnishing the compression post, which is hiding in there, and also fairing a little bit of unevenness up here. All of that is in preparation of applying primer. I've only got a couple of coats of varnish on the compression post, so it's not looking super awesome yet. Let's fast forward a couple of days so I'll be done with all of the varnishing and the other prep for primer. Good morning, guys. It is a few days later, fairly early in the morning. I should have time to apply the first coat of primer before heading to work. And as you can see, everything is already masked off and ready to go. I'm going to be using a different paint in the forward cabin than I've used here in the galley. Here in the galley I used undercoat, and for the forward cabin I'm going to be using this stuff, Interior Finish 770. They're both white paints, it's just that this one should be a little bit more satiny, which you guys know I love. The paint I've used here in the galley is borderline too glossy for my liking. It's okay, but it definitely shouldn't be more glossy. So I'm really excited to see how this stuff is going to turn out. But before we can apply paint, of course, we need to apply primer. Enter stage left, Interprime 820. Let's get some of this stuff mixed up and start applying it. It's yet another couple of days later, and by God, the boat is starting to look like a strong contender for Hoarder's monthly home of the year. Aft cabin thoroughly filled with junk. Same goes for the soon-to-be head and shower. And the saloon is definitely a giant mess too, including the nav station. Meanwhile, the forward cabin is surprisingly free of junk and awfully white looking. This morning I applied the last coat of the interior finish to the vast majority of the areas here in the forward cabin. There are a couple of areas that I'll have to give another coat tonight, but then the painting is done. The underside of the lockers here in the V-berth would be an example of one of those places that needs just one more coat. Now I can still go ahead and cut the insulation for these areas today, and then I'll have it ready to adhere in place tomorrow. While I am busy messing around with the insulation, I might as well go ahead and add it to these last two remaining sections under the deck. That stuff right over there is what I'll be using. It is 19mm thick Armaflex. All of the insulation for the forward cabin is now ready, and I've got the headliner loosely just held in place so that I can drill the holes for the lights I'm gonna mount up here. I've got 8 lights ready to install. All I need to do is to swap out the halogen bulb in these for a nice little LED bulb instead, and then run a bit of wiring. This is the exact same process I used a few months back here in the saloon, so I'm not gonna go into any kind of detail. Let's see if all the lights turn on. This is perfect. There is a ton of light in here, even here in this small section where the washer and dryer is gonna go. This is perfect. It's gotten kind of late, so I'm gonna hold off until tomorrow to do the much needed tidying up in here. But yeah, tomorrow we should also be able to take a look at that Ondeck Hub. That should be very exciting. This week has just gone by in the blink of an eye. I've been so crazy busy, but I started out today by adhering the insulation in place in the V-berth. I plan on installing the wooden slats tonight and putting up a little bit of mood lighting, and after that, well, the forward cabin is basically ready for me to move in. I've also spent a few hours tidying up here inside of the boat. It is not perfect yet, but at least I can move around without tripping over stuff. But let's take a closer look at this guy, the Ondeck Hub. I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but this guy will also give you 5 relays that you can control from your chart plotter or from your phone. This is everything that's in the box: the hub itself, a big bag of goodies, and a manual. Here's the exploded view of everything that was in the bag of goodies. There's an Ethernet cable, NMEA 2000 cable, power cable, input-output harness doodad, antennas for cellular connection, a relay, there's a temperature doodad, there is this intrusion detection doodad, and this guy for detecting when shore power is disconnected. The hub comes with a single relay. You can add up to 5, but you should be aware that the one that comes with the box is for 12 volts. So if your boat is 24 volts, well, then you will have to order separate relays. I'm okay with that because my primary interest in this box is not really the relays. It's more the monitoring and tracking capabilities. For digital switching here aboard Athena, I'm using C-Zone stuff. But if you want to dip your toes into digital switching, but you're not too tech savvy, well then this might be a better option for you, because the C-Zone stuff, while super spiffy, does have a distinct flavor of being geared more towards the professional installer. If you've got a small boat, or you just want to keep things simple, well then you might get better value for money with the Ondeck Hub compared to the C-Zone stuff. And also with the Ondeck Hub, you do get all of the other cool features included in the box. Let's get the antennas strapped onto this little guy. Included were these little plastic doohickeys that are going to cover up the bottom of the antennas. I'm going to mount the hub in this orientation. That's why I've got the antennas poking up here. If you're going to be mounting it flat, well, then you should have the antennas still poking up. That is mentioned in the manual and also on this little sticker here. I've connected the power cable, the NMEA 2000 cable, the Ethernet cable, and I'm just about to connect the input-output cable here. And there's this little cool sticker here that explains what each of these little wires do. That information is also here on page 4 in the instructions, but it's kind of cool that they included this little sticker. As per the instructions, I have wired up the little temperature sensor, the intruder detection doohickey, as well as the shore power detection doohickey. It's worth noting that you can install more than one of these intruder detection security doodads here, so if you've got 5 hatches like I've got here aboard Athena, that's perfectly fine. Where I'm going to be mounting the Ondeck Hub, it is a little bit cramped, so I'd like to just make sure that I've got everything wired up and see that everything works here on the kitchen island before attempting to do the same in a very cramped space. So let's connect some power and see what happens. I'm hoping we'll see some flashing LEDs down here. So far, so good. I opened up the Active Captain app from Garmin on my phone, which is how I do firmware updates, download charts, and a bunch of other stuff. And well, it told me that there's an Ondeck Hub connected. What I think is really cool about the Ondeck Hub is that it works basically anywhere in the world. That is a huge advantage from a long-distance cruising perspective. It just requires a cell connection. But of course, that cell connection also means that there is a monthly subscription. I think it is around the equivalent of $12 per month, but let me go ahead and get this set up real quick. With the activation completed, I've now got a few extra menu items here in the Active Captain app. I've got sensors, switches, and tracking and security. As you can see, I don't have the relay hooked up yet, so let's skip the switches part and take a look at the sensors. In here, we can see a bunch of useful stuff. You can see the heading of the boat. You can see that, for instance, my security sensor is triggered. That is because the two halves here are very far apart. If we put these together in a little bit, it'll stop saying triggered. And we can see that the shore power is connected. You can see that the boat is not moving. And we can also see that there's 20% left in the fuel tank. That's because it's pulling data in from the NMEA 2000 network. We can see the wind direction, the wind speed, and the temperature here in the main cabin, which seems extremely high. That's just because the sensor is dangling around down here in the sun. Let's scroll back up to see that, yep, the security sensor is no longer triggered. All of this sensor data is getting pushed up into the almighty cloud, so it'll be available no matter if you're near the boat or if you're on the other side of the planet. And it will also store the data for, I think it's 30 days or something like that. Like I mentioned, the tank level here is because that data is on the NMEA 2000 network. And on the last page in the instructions here, you can see all of the data that the box will grab from the NMEA 2000 network and put up into the cloud. This one right here, called fluid level, is that tank level sensor, but as you can see, there's a bunch of other data too. Just for the fun of it, I've gone ahead and connected this relay as per the instructions. I've already added the switch, so if we go into switches, you'll see a switch here called test, and if I click this button, you should be able to hear the relay engage. It's gonna take a second though. There we go. Now let's do the same thing from the chart plotter. That's directly connected to the Ondeck Hub, so there should be no delay. We're not going to have to go via the cloud. It's a direct connection. Here's the list of all of my circuits, including the test one I've just created. Now if I manipulate the state of that, you can see that's instant. You might be thinking, wait, how could it possibly ever be a good idea to turn on something when you're not actually on the boat? Well, let's say that you live far away from the marina where you keep your boat and you'd like to go sailing tomorrow, but you'd like the fridge to be cold when you get to the boat so you can put your stuff in there right away. Well, you just turn on the fridge and then tomorrow when you get there, it'll be cold. One of the other cool features is hiding here in the tracking and security section. And if we go in there, you can set up a geofence alarm. That means you set the radius of a circle around the boat. And if the boat moves outside of that circle, well, then you get an alarm. That could be a useful feature in, for instance, an anchorage where you want to be notified if your boat drags, or you could set it up in your marina to make sure nobody steals your boat, or well, at least you'd get notified if somebody steals your boat. Let's try a fun little experiment here. I will pull the power cable from the Ondeck Hub, and it should still be working. The hub has a built-in battery, so if somebody cuts the power to your boat, you should still be able to talk to the hub. I don't know if it goes into some kind of low power state or something, but let's try triggering the security alarm and see what happens. You can see it is disarmed. If I go in here and force an update, it is triggered. So yeah, this thing works even if you disconnect the power. There are more things I can monitor with the Ondeck Hub, like a pair of bilge pumps or a pair of batteries, but I can't really show you guys those features. I think it's safe to say the Ondeck Hub works, so I'm ready to get it mounted, but there is something fishy going on with the temperature sensor. It keeps saying that it's either very warm or very cold in here, so yeah, I'll have to look into that at some point. This little guy is going to be an important part of our security system here on the boat, so I think it might be counterproductive to go into a lot of detail about where and how I install him. So yeah, let me go ahead and get this installed off camera. Earlier today I swung by the workshop and picked up the mahogany slats for the V-berth. They look absolutely beautiful. I am really pleased with how these turned out, and I cannot wait to see how they look installed. So let's get to it. Ta-da! I think that looks pretty dang spiffy. I am 99% done. Over here on the starboard side, I've got that little slat up on top to hide the seam. That is not installed on the port side yet. In an attempt to bump up the spiffiness even further, I am going to mount a little LED light strip on the back of that top slat. Oh, that looks pretty nice. Now, I didn't do my due diligence with these lights. I needed some that I could get fast, and I needed some that were 24 volts. So I just picked these Philips Hue ones, but they're not waterproof. So yeah, but they do change color. I've turned off the lights, and the LED strips, well, they do provide a really nice bit of mood lighting. I installed something very similar to that aboard Obelix, and I've never really used it, but yeah, it's nice to have. I think there are a bunch of tasks I can close here on my little board, and if you're new to the channel, these are all the tasks I want to complete before Athena is ready for Ava and I to start cruising full time. So a bunch of these we can't close now, but most of them we can close next week. There is this one, paint the forward cabin, that's done. Build a clothing locker, that's done. Wooden slats, insulate the side of the hull, headliner, lights, and insulate the underside of the deck. Finally, a bit of progress. Now, most of these I should be able to close after next week. On my to-do list for next week is to install the washer and the dryer in the forward cabin. That's going to be a little bit of an involved process because I think I'll have to remove the forward hatch to fit the dryer through there. It's just a little bit too big. So yeah, that could end up being a right pain in the behind, but we'll see. I'd also like to install a door here next week. Unfortunately, the old door got accidentally chopped in half, so I can't reuse that. And I'm not sure I've got the hardware either. So yeah, that's also potentially going to be a little bit of a pain in the behind. As far as this week, I am thoroughly pleased with the progress I've made. It was a ton of work, but the forward cabin is almost ready for me to move in here. I am so close. If next week goes to plan, then, well, I should be able to start moving into the forward cabin after a week. And I don't have a lot of stuff because I've been living the last 6 years on a 30-foot sailboat, so it shouldn't take me more than a couple of hours to move, so at least that is not gonna be a pain in the behind. And on that uplifting note, I'll end this week's video here. I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!